morning and welcome. My name is Kimberly Christensen, and I am happy to share with you research that I've been doing on guided imagery and on contemplative education and science. Last year I started this just thinking about, trying to improve education for children. And I really didn't know much about guided imagery. Were there any studies? What could we learn about it? Was this going to work? I knew that I'd use guided imagery in my own personal life. I'd use them with clients, and I saw the effects. So this is the first year that I was able to discover some research about the effectiveness about guided imagery. I am going to say that there is exactly one study, and I am still locating the source of the actual study with results. Unfortunately, the woman who did the study on guided imagery with children in Los Angeles Unified School District, where I used to teach, passed away, and the entire center is now gone. So finding any pieces and remnants, references, but to find the paper that actually has results has been difficult. So today I'm going to share with you how I did some of my research, because as I go into the classrooms and I'm using guided imagery with the students, I'm putting it on a CD, and I'm looking for how guided imagery can influence or hopefully have significant change in a classroom and academic test scores in science. So I'm going to talk about why I chose science, and so it'll be interesting. Okay. Contemplative education, what is that? It is a transpersonal piece and a process where we're actually using our inner vision to actually go inside and to make changes not only to ourselves, right, but we can quiet and focus the mind and open doorways of learning. And so, of course, being a transpersonal school, this is something that we have practiced often, but is not always something that's been practiced in the schools. So there's an invitation to deeper inquiry through mindfulness, meditation, and imagery. And of course, many people are aware of mindfulness now because of this time cover, the Mindful Revolution. And one of the wonderful things that is going on that I loved about this quote, this is a superintendent who was at this Burton High School in San Francisco. He says, listen, we're trying to get performance up in schools, and we found that actually quieting the mind and quiet time is actually effective. So it's like, great, okay, so the seeds are being planted for using contemplative education in the classroom. So this is a good sign. And as my aunt would say, well, I was, using quiet music after lunch all the time, and the kids put their heads down. I don't know how many of you remember that. You put your head down and get quiet time. She's like, yes, and I use music, so she's like, oh, this is just, common to me. Hi, Auntie A. It's my aunt. Just want to give you a shout out. I love you. You're awesome. Educated in primary for years. Amazing person. Anyway, so I love this because here it is in a high school that they are showing that the importance of social emotional factors are going to help improve children's lives. It's not just academics, and that was a huge statement for me. So I love this. So again, what is it that contemplative education can do when it comes to contemporary education? What are the factors that we're looking at? Number one is performance, and that was what the superintendent was talking about. Increasing the performance for students, because we've got the standardized testing now, because we've got to really, make sure these kids are really making a change in their academics. It's about character, and that's about social emotional management, right? How are the children behaving and working together? And it has a lot to do with compassion training, and the kids are doing quieting and loving meditation. But the last thing is depth. And this is where the schools have not really made any strides, because with mindfulness, they've been quieting the mind, right? With mindfulness, they have been increasing some performance, but they really have not been able to take the students to a deeper level of understanding. And that's what I'm hoping guided imagery will do. And so where it says performance and character, those are the things that mindfulness has done, but what guided imagery will be working on is the depth, actually getting deeper understanding of your topic and raising performance. That's what my study is about. My mentor, Bill Nye the Science Guy. You don't know, I had a picture of him at a science conference. I was thrilled, me and Bill. He took depth to a whole nother level of science because he had these videos and he played around and he used repetition and he had all these images to explain very complex scientific concepts. And I loved it. And this is one of the studies that, research I should say, that I looked at. It talks about how hard it is for students to be able to access scientific information because they don't have the vocabulary. And science is considered elitist, right? Usually only children of families who are well-versed in language, who have some concept of, what science is, that there's something out there that we can study. A lot of the students don't have the ability to really understand what science is. And so imagery allows students to visualize things. So one example was of chemistry. Sometimes there are things you can't see, right? Before they had microscopes, and the electron microscopes, you couldn't really see what these chemists, what these physicists or whoever is talking about. Now you can just close your eyes and imagine it. So visualizations really help students to get an experience with the concepts. And it also allows students to increase topic engagement. When students are engaged and construct their own meaning, learning is much more powerful. And I did that even as a teacher, prior knowledge, going in and understanding, making connections to the material. This is what using imagery does. And so now we're gonna put those things together because this is what these scientists have done. It says the rational part of research would in fact be useless if it were not complemented by the intuition that gives scientists new insights and makes them creative. And all of these scientists, in some way, access their imagination to be able to make their changes. And so here's an example of how it works in the classroom. It says a child can grasp in a very immediate way the principles of Boyle's law by imagining what it would be like to be a molecule in an enclosed space which was gradually compressed. So by using that imaginative piece, the children can kind of feel and access that. And I'm gonna kind of give you an idea of how that worked with my two little roommates. It's coming up. So Poincaré, I don't know how to say his name. So he solved math problems while in moments of creative reverie, right? And so by going in and using the imagination, this is what these scientists are doing. They're using imagery, they're using the power of it to make a change and to see, how is this gonna work? They see it in their mind, they see pictures, like Kukuli. He saw the molecular structure of benzene while imagining a snake swallowing its tail. It says he was thinking about it and that's the image that popped up. And so this is all over the internet, so that's his molecular structure, but he saw that in his mind using imagery. Now, how does imagery work? So the rules of imagery. So there's directed imagery and there's spontaneous imagery. What I'm looking for is spontaneous imagery. So in the examples that I'll be working with in children, I'm hoping that they're allowing themselves to be quiet and still and to allow images to form. Spontaneous imagery does not have voluntary control. It's like something just pops into your mind and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that, right? It's the free flowing of the imagination using images in your mind. Whereas directed imagery, you have to say, so imagine a red apple, right? And so you have to start with an image and someone is taking you through the image, right? But you can stop it, you can start it, you're just kind of observing it. So totally different than spontaneous imagery, which allows the inner consciousness to come out and direct what you're learning. One of the big pieces that I'm using, and there are 3 different types of imagery, is guided cognitive imagery. So this is a little bit different from affective imagery, which is used in psychology. So they use that to help develop the self-esteem, to see how you're feeling. This is not about how you're feeling. We're actually actively using the imagination in order to learn something. So this is a very focused kind of imagery. And here's a little boy listening to his guided imagery. And they use this a lot in health. So students are able to see themselves well, to build up their immune system. Yeah, it's wonderful. One of the big things that I'll also be introducing in the study is called empathic imagery. And that's really getting next to the image and talking to it. And it is an amazing piece that is used in psychosynthesis with the work that they're doing, helping people to understand who they are and talking to characters in your mind and what are they saying, really connecting with them. And this is a big piece in science, because Barbara McClintock did the same thing with her corn. So she literally made friends with the corn to really understand them. So she had a real compassionate connection to them, and that's how she was able to understand the structure of corn molecules. She won a Nobel Prize for it. And what's so interesting is that many of the scientists have won Nobel Prizes for their work because they've used imagery. They've relied on their imagination to create it, to form it, and to inspire them. So, here are my two little test subjects. Not really test subjects. Where I live, though I told the mom I do meditation, she's like, what? You have to teach the girls. She has a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old. And she's like, you do it with them, just do it with them. I want to see how that works. So I said, okay, so let's try it out. They were willing, thank goodness. And my questions were, as I'm writing my script for the children who I'm going to be working with, does music make attending to the activity easier or harder? Will the children be able to image without practice? Because I had these concerns. I didn't know how to write this script and put it together without understanding how children work. And because I only had one study with children, two kind of, it was like a case study, I really didn't know what to do. Did I need to have a pre-practice piece for them? If I use the music, is that going to interfere? I didn't know what my variables would be. And it says, will using guided imagery be more difficult with an older child whose imaginative use may have been suppressed after 4 years of right-brain classroom learning? So, you know, because I'm starting with 3rd grade students, I wanted them to be fresh and to still know how to use their imagination. So many of our children have stopped using it. So here's Sophie and Callie, and neither child had ever experienced meditation, mindfulness, or guided imagery before the activity. So I started them off with a focusing activity, and this is from a book by Beverly Galyin, who did the research in LAUSD, and she made like a little handbook of guided scripts. So I was just borrowing hers, and I said, okay, let's see what happens with the color circles. And there was music and no music, and the 7-year-old was just explaining that the dot got bigger, and she felt that it was easier to focus and to see the color images in her mind without the music. With music. Whereas Callie, the older one, who's 11, she found that, well, you know what, no, I liked the music. It helped me really focus better. And when the music was there, what was so interesting though, she says, but I forgot the music was playing. So it's almost like she didn't need the music, right? You know, it was interesting. This was not a serious study, by the way. We were just playing around. Then we did an activity with lining up apples. And so they were focusing on the information, and Sophie says with no music, you know, this is what her apples look like, and they're all red with stems. But when the music came on, she said it made it easier. Now she's got a worm, and now she's got 2 green apples. So it was interesting. So their information was that they put a picture in their mind, and I'm saying imagine apples, start with 1 apple, then 2 apples, then 3 apples, then 4 apples, then 5. And so at the end, I said, when we're done, they were supposed to draw what they saw. And what was interesting is that as things started changing, and I had to be careful about having this conversation because she's in 2nd grade. So if her sister spoke first, before she had finished her drawing, she would add something into the picture. So I learned it's like important, like, okay, just tell me what you saw, not what you think you should see or what Callie saw. This was Callie, the older girl, and what I found interesting is that when the yellow apple came up, she said she was surprised to see it. Because I asked, how did you see the imagery? It's like, did you feel like you had to create it? You know, did it just come by itself? And she said, no. She says, I wasn't expecting to see a yellow apple. So that meant that she was experiencing spontaneous imagery. She wasn't forcing the pictures. So, what did I think about all of this? It was interesting. Did using music make attending to the activity easier or harder? Well, there's only 2 subjects. They're both at different ages. It was really hard to tell. I really couldn't make a distinction, but I think that for the CD that I'm going to make, I will choose to leave the music out. I think that just making it pure, using it without music, I think I don't have any other variables. Will the children be able to image without practice? I was surprised. The mother was like, I don't think Callie's gonna be able to do it. I've never seen, she's, was she even meditating? Her head was looking like this because her mom was hiding in the kitchen, right? Just kind of peering at her on the side. And I said, yes, she was working, she was doing it. And she was the 5th grader. So both children were able to image it without having to have any practice beforehand. Because that was one of the concerns, that you may have to warm them up, give some practice, because we're gonna do this for academic content. So I won't necessarily be having all of this practice with the kids on the CD. Maybe they'll have one opportunity to learn how to breathe and do the centering. But then each activity will be directly cognitive related. They're going to be imagining something, using atoms, using plants, whatever the topic is that I choose. And my concern was, would guided imagery be more difficult for an older kid? And no, she was able to grab it right away. So I was really relieved. And my girl, Mrs. Frizzle, I use her videos all the time too. I love it. So question and answer time. And by the way, my references. Any questions about my study or any of the information? Wow, I covered everything. That's great. Oh.
I have a question.
You do? Okay.
So when you were referring to your future study, is this your dissertation work that you're looking to set up, or?
Yes.
And do you have a location down? And
I know I'm going to be in the Bay Area. I haven't sent out anything. I already know what's the difficulty or challenge has been, that each district uses different types of science materials. Some use FOSS, which means there's no textbook. So, but they do have pre and post tests. So the key is that they had to have pre and post tests before they do a unit. And some use academic text. So depending on which district I'm going to go to, then it depends on how I'm going to set it up. So yes, so that was kind of interesting.
And are you looking to study in one school or across a collection of schools?
I'm using 4 schools, so then I'll have a controlled study and I'll have the intervention study. So
great.
Yeah, and then afterwards I'll be doing a qualitative, picking the top 5 students from each of the 4 classrooms who are using the intervention and interviewing them just to see what might have made the difference. It's based on how they improve from pre-test to post-test. Yeah, so I'm excited because this practice, I'm so glad the mom was like, oh, you want to do meditation? Yeah, use my kids. I can, thanks. So that was just a blessing. Yeah, so it made it easier for me because I was really concerned. I didn't know how to create this without knowing how much information I needed beforehand.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thanks everyone.